Oh yeah, I can totally see that there was no influence from these dads for their son to transition at the age of 4. Definitely couldn't be the two trans men that he has for parents. Hello everyone, my name is Nick and I'm a transsexual man who doesn't use his mental disorder as a political mouthpiece. I'm sorry that this video is an entire week late. I'm in the middle of packing and trying to clean up my house because I'm going to be moving at the beginning of August. I'm trying to make a schedule and be consistent up until then, just to sort of, get the hang of things and scheduling and everything. But if I don't upload, then that is why. I'm sure everyone can guess what this video is going to be about simply from the title and the opening. But if you haven't, then we are going to be talking about my least favorite thing that has come out of the alphabet cult, and that is transgender kids. I want to start off by saying that I have nothing against kids with gender dysphoria, and I don't have anything against the kids who were manipulated, brainwashed, and enabled into transitioning. It obviously isn't their fault, and kids can have gender dysphoria. I started showing signs of gender dysphoria at the age of 4. And that is typically around the time that kids who do end up going on to transition later in life do show signs of gender dysphoria. But that's not what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about the kids who were put through a gender transition by the adults around them. We all know that kids can't consent. They have absolutely no idea the ramifications of a medical transition. And how, with the current state of care for sex changes, most adults don't either. I know I didn't. And I did years of research before I went to my doctor to get on testosterone. There isn't enough public information about how damaging these drugs are to the body. And yes, they are damaging to the human body. That is why transsexual people don't live as long as the average person. But that's just hormone replacement therapy, or HRT. That isn't accounting for all of the damaging side effects of puberty blockers, which is an entirely different thing from estrogen and testosterone. Puberty blockers are far more damaging than HRT ever will be, but we'll get into that a little bit more later.
The critical time to be there is grades 5 through 8 because you want to catch kids when they're starting puberty, because that's the time in which identity formation is central to their lives. However, early intervention is key. So we actually are designing a kindergarten through grade 2 curriculum this summer. And I will tell you, one of the most rewarding experiences, Nikki, we were in a local school system in an elementary school, and we were in grades 3, 4, and 5. And after we were there, 5 students went to the principal's office and came out. So we are really intentionally going into younger and younger grades.
These are the same people who are claiming that they aren't grooming and indoctrinating our children. By the very definition, this is grooming. This is a teacher, by the way. Is this the kind of person that you want teaching your kids? Not only did she confirm that they know exactly when to start the manipulation, but she also stated that they are going after younger and younger kids. These people do not care about your children. They only care about one thing. That's indoctrination. Oh, but this isn't happening, right, activists? You're not grooming our children? That's really funny because this isn't the first video that I've seen of these people saying that they are coming after our kids. Yes, you heard that right. They were chanting, "We're here, we're queer, and we're coming for your children." And here's another teacher teaching children between the ages of 5 and 8 about transgenderism and sexuality.
Hey y'all, Mr. Hart here. I'm coming in with part 2 for my response. So, with part 2, what I really want to talk about is that this lesson isn't to push LGBTQ onto these kids and say, you're all gonna be gay. No, that's not it. We're not trying to tell kids to question about their gender identity and figuring all this stuff out. We're not telling kids to do that. We're trying to break our heteronormative society that we live in and tell kids it's not normal to be straight. It's normal to be you. It's normal to feel comfortable in your shoes. It's normal to feel comfortable in your skin, regardless of the color of it, regardless of the gender, regardless of who you are. You need to be comfortable. And better yet, you need to accept people's differences, and you need to love diversity and love the differences of our class. And when you have that, when they become adults, that's gonna change the world.
Not normal to be straight? The last time that I checked, the population of heterosexual adults in the United States of America is 88.7%. Only 5.5% of the United States population is homosexual, 2.1% is bisexual, and the true number of transsexual adults in the United States is about 0.1%. Due to the influx of people identifying as trans without getting gender dysphoria diagnosed, or lying about it, or getting manipulated into being trans, that number is now recorded as 0.5%. These are the kind of lies that teachers are telling kids in school. Why would a child want to be straight or stay the sex that they were born as if their teacher is telling them that it isn't normal? It's no wonder that there's so many trans kids today. Returning to the first video that I showed, that teacher said that the perfect time to catch kids is between the ages of 5 and 8. And what age does a second teacher teach? Kids ages 5 through 8. Could they be any more obvious? They aren't even trying to hide the fact that they're grooming our kids. It isn't just teachers and doctors, though, but parents who are manipulating their children as well. And a lot of the time, it's not just one child in the family.
Hey, of course, and we all appreciate that you want to use the right ones. So Ash, starting from the left, uses they, them pronouns. Mars uses she, they, and it pronouns. Leo uses they and he pronouns. And Summer uses she and they pronouns.
The likelihood of having 4 trans kids is 0. There's no chance. Or if there is one, it's so close to 0 that it's just easier to say 0. Gender dysphoria affects 0.1% of the population. You will never see this many kids in one household actually having gender dysphoria. But this isn't the only family.
The reaction when people hear that we have 2 trans kids is pretty shock and awe.
Before I had transitioned, I had like a piece missing to me and it just didn't feel right. And I was nervous to tell my parents.
Being trans would mean you were born the gender that you don't feel like in your heart.
Just now, a month ago, started hormone blockers to prevent his menstruation cycle and breast development, which would cause a lot of havoc mentally. Can you show me what the blocker looks like that's implanted? First show me in your arm. Where is it?
It's right there.
Right there? Can I feel it?
Mm-hmm.
Do people ever wonder if you're too young to know if you're trans?
Yeah, and like, are they too young to know that they're cis?
Olivia said she was transgender from the age of 4 until 5, and we allowed her to wear whatever she wanted, but she didn't socially transition until she was 5 years old. A lot of people think that it must be a copycat situation where the younger one's just mimicking the older one, which makes sense, which is why we also hesitated in terms of jumping into another social transition. But this is who she is, and this is where we are.
One thing I've noticed in these families is that the oldest child is always the first one to come out. It would be a different story if they were an older teen and not a child under the age of 12, but that just isn't the case in these circumstances. When the oldest comes out as trans, the younger siblings will see that the trans sibling is getting more of the attention. Or they just do what all younger siblings do, and that is look up to their older sibling. Of course they want to do what their big brother or sister is doing. That's just how younger siblings are. The mom in the second clip even said that flat out. Another thing that I've noticed is these kids typically use made-up pronouns on top of the normal ones or strictly use the made-up pronouns. You'll never see just a kid using he, him. They'll always be using he, they, or he, she, or he, they, she, or any pronouns. you'll never see a transsexual using any of these made-up pronouns. These kids are just playing dress-up while they're going through a very hard time in their lives. Their bodies are changing, and they just don't understand what's going on. They don't truly understand exactly what they're feeling, but their parents are very quick to tell them that they're trans without a second thought. Having a trans kid has also become a way to get famous online. If you openly have a trans kid online, you'll get thousands of followers, if not hundreds of thousands of followers.
All that work and what did it get me? Why did I do it?
This dad has 4 million followers. I looked through his content and it's boring. It's very clear that he only got this many followers by brainwashing his son into believing that he's a girl. If he didn't have a trans kid, he would not have this many followers. Something very prevalent is parents believing that their child is trans simply because they like to wear clothes that the opposite sex typically wears.
Her parents admit it was hard to process their then son begging in tears to wear a dress.
I feel like I'm an open-minded person, but when it's like your son, asking you to do this, and I think I wasn't thinking about her feelings at the time. I was just thinking about how are people going to react to it.
You were afraid, a little bit afraid for her.
Yeah, and I still am afraid for her.
But the North Carolina family, who asked that we not use their name, has learned to embrace a change they never saw coming.
If we continued to say no, you have to live as a boy, she would continue, she's young. I'm sure she would have done it, but we didn't want to be her first bully.
Your son begging in tears to wear a dress doesn't automatically mean that he was supposed to be a girl. It means he wanted to wear a dress. These parents claim to be the most progressive people on planet Earth for mutilating their very young kids, but they are the least progressive people alive. If anything, they're regressive. There isn't anything wrong with your little boy wanting to wear a dress sometimes. If you're so progressive, why won't you let your little boy be a boy while he wears a dress? Why does he have to be a girl to wear dresses? I hate using the phobia words because they have quite literally lost all meaning, but these parents are incredibly homophobic. Kids who express interest in things directed toward the opposite sex usually grow up to be homosexual. These parents think that they're doing something good here, that they're the most woke and inclusive, but they are quite literally transing away the gay. This is starting to turn into a eugenics kind of situation. Why are you so fast to sterilize your gay kids, parents? I would love to know. There are also parents who are trans themselves or start to transition after they have kids. Kind of like the looking up to older siblings situation, kids look to their parents for guidance. And when you have an openly trans parent, well...
We went from mother
and son
to father
and daughter.
That's right, this father and daughter used to be mother and son. 15-year-old Corey Mason, who loves mascara and lip gloss, was actually born a boy.
I always wanted to be a girl. I would always, go like this, like this. I was always girly.
Corey started taking puberty blockers at age 11 to stop facial hair growth and deepening of the voice.
Just seeing her courage and her bravery in the face of so much adversity, I think that's ultimately what gave me the courage to come out myself.
2 years now, the two have been sharing their transition from mother and son to father and daughter. So you two draw inspiration and support from each other, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like watching her walk this walk?
Just seeing her and her bravery just gave me the strength and courage to come out as well and face the world as my true self.
What goes through your mind when you hear Eric talk about you as a hero to him?
I feel like I've done my part and helped him through his journey as he's helped me.
I'm not trying to say that trans people can't have or adopt children. When it comes to transitioning after having kids, it's far healthier for the child if the parent waits to transition until the child is grown. That way, the child isn't as easily influenced by the parent's decision. There are also those trans parents who don't gender their child until the child decides, which is absolutely ludicrous. Kids can't even decide with certainty what they want for dinner. So how does a parent expect them to know what freaking gender they are? Again, I'm not saying that trans people can't have kids. There are some really amazing trans parents out there.
When a kid tells you that they're transgender, believe them. A lot of people will say that it's impossible for a 4-year-old.
Why is it always people that don't have kids that are speaking for children? I'm trans and I've been a stepmother for the last 2 years. He's 5 now and has no idea that I'm transgender. He's not ready for that conversation, and we don't plan to tell him for a very long time until he's old enough to understand. 5-year-olds believe Santa Claus exists. And the fact you can sit there and tell me a 3, 4, 5-year-old is mentally competent enough to transition is fucking insane and borderline predatory. I'm thankful I waited until I was an adult, because as a child, I would not have been mentally ready for how serious a transition is. What baffles me is that these radicals think that transitions are so normal and not a big deal. My stepson, for example, loves pink and loves Barbies. And trust me, I'm all for breaking gender norms, but none of that means that he's trans. These people think children must medically transition to be validated, but they want grown men to be validated even without a transition whatsoever. Wild. It's not safe or morally ethical to allow children to transition. Let kids be kids.
This is Eden, and I love her content. And I think that she is a great example of what a good parent who is trans looks like. She knows that her stepson isn't ready for that conversation yet, so she's keeping her transness to herself. This is exactly what parents should do. Why does your child need to know that you're trans? How is that significant to their life? Spoiler, it isn't. The child will have a perfectly normal life without having to know that their parent is trans. From all the evidence that I've seen online, it is far more harmful to kids to be openly trans in front of them. Another amazing trans parent is Buck Angel. I wasn't able to find any clips of him and his son on the internet, but I think that's great that he's keeping his son offline because of how young he is. Buck is 62 now, and he's been transitioned for over 30 years, and his son still doesn't know that he's trans. His son will learn when Buck believes that he's ready, and that is exactly how it should happen. Let's go back to doctors. When kids start going to their parents telling them that they want to be a girl or that they only want to wear boy clothes, most parents will bring their kids to a specialist in gender studies. But these doctors are becoming master manipulators when it comes to putting these kids on these very dangerous drugs. They have absolutely no care for the kids that they are treating and only care about lining their own pockets with the massive amounts of money that comes from a sex change, especially a sex change on a minor. Doctors ask parents one question that changes the path of their child's life in an instant. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a transgender son? And vice versa for boys. Doctors put it into parents' heads that their child is going to take their own life if they don't transition them that instant, when in reality, that child was likely never suicidal in the first place. When you also put that into the child's head, they will believe that they are going to take their own life if they don't start transitioning in that moment. These next clips are what happens when doctors manipulate parents into putting their own children on these very dangerous drugs. These videos are really hard to watch, so viewer discretion is advised.
I'm gonna be right here. And you can squeeze it.
The 6th grader is about to have a tiny medical device implanted in his left arm.
Cut this out.
Jack's dad and mom are at his side.
Oh, jeez, I'm really terrified.
Jack, just relax. Jack, it's just your head. Jack, relax.
Meredith's gonna put some more numbing to make sure that it's all numb, okay?
The implant stops female puberty and will keep Jack from growing breasts.
And she promises to begin giving her estrogen, female hormones,
in 2 years.
Around 13. That's what I think. Yes, you're not going to develop breast buds on the blockers, but you're not going to wait until 16 to start. You know that, okay?
Josie received the blockers as an implant in her arm.
It's okay if you cry.
So with all the bravery she could muster,
you're going to feel a little bit of a...
Josie held on tight as another chapter opened in this young girl's life.
Closing up the skin.
A lot of times it strikes me that had this happened just 20 years ago,
Thank you.
I wouldn't have been able to give her blockers and she would have had to go through male puberty. That terrifies me.
It's all done. Do you want a hug?
I don't know that she would have survived male puberty.
These children are terrified. They trusted their parents to do what was right for them, and their parents put them on a table and allowed a doctor to put a destructive drug inside of them because of a feeling that they had. These children will grow up to have low bone density, loss of fertility, lack of sexual function, and stunted mental development. In males, it stops genital growth. Even if that boy does grow up to be a trans woman, he wouldn't be able to get the safest option for a vaginoplasty because he wouldn't have enough material to use. And if he didn't grow up to be a trans woman, then he would have a micropenis for the rest of his life. In females, it stops breast growth. If she grows up and doesn't decide to continue to transition, she will never grow breasts. And if by some miracle she is able to have kids, she will not be able to breastfeed those children. None of these changes are reversible, no matter what the activists say.
This may upset some of you, but there are more and more studies coming out that prove puberty blockers are not in fact reversible. Obviously, some people are thinking this is a great way to cope with kids having anxiety going through puberty and being uncomfortable in their bodies. But the reality is that puberty blockers suppress estrogen and testosterone, which are hormones that help develop the reproductive system, but also affect the bones, the brain, and other parts of the body. Some doctors are claiming that children will simply snap back and regain their bone strength once they stop the blockers, but evidence is suggesting that many do not fully rebound and lag behind their peers. Unfortunately, this is something a lot of people are going to have to learn the hard way. The professionals don't know everything. Sometimes they're misinformed. There's such a thing as malpractice. They misdiagnose. It happens. Teaching kids to cope with their own discomfort in their bodies by changing everything is not healthy. This is chemical castration. It's a crime. This is the lobotomy of our generation.
Children are getting surgeries as well, and those are 100% irreversible. Girls from ages 12 to 15 are getting double mastectomies. The youngest male to get a vaginoplasty was Kim Petras. She was 16 when she got that surgery.
My name is Layla Jane. I'm 18 years old, and I am a woman who has detransitioned. I am actively suing Kaiser Permanente, and I'm suing the doctors that gave me those treatments related to my transition.
I think you're one of the youngest detransitioners other than myself that I know of, and you actually started transitioning a year earlier than I did, and 2 years before I got my mastectomy. You were 12 when you started testosterone blockers, right?
Yeah.
Were you on blockers?
Initially, yeah, they started me on Lupron, and then they put me on testosterone.
You got your mastectomy at 13, just a few years after you started puberty. And that makes me upset personally. How do you feel about that? What's it like dealing with that?
It's very conflicting, but honestly, I'm very upset that it was done to me so young, and also, not to mention, in a headspace where I just shouldn't have been able to make those kind of decisions. You know, I actually had never seen like a diagram of like a breast and like the organ and like the lactation like organs, like the glands and all that, until really recently I saw a diagram. They never showed anything like that to me, and they really watered it down and just called it top surgery, not a radical...
Not a double mastectomy.
Double mastectomy, what it was, right.
Layla Jane was 13 years old when she got both of her breasts removed. Now she's 18 and she regrets that surgery. Her parents failed her, and her doctors destroyed her body.
My name is Chloe Cole, and I am a detransitioner. Another way to put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. At the age of 12, I began to experience what my medical team would later diagnose as gender dysphoria. I was well into an early puberty, and I was very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening to my body. I was intimidated by male attention, and when I told my parents that I felt like a boy, in retrospect, all I meant was that I hated puberty, that I wanted this newfound sexual attention to go away, that I looked up to my brothers a little bit more than I did to my sisters. I came out as transgender in a letter I sent on the dining room table. My parents were immediately concerned. They felt like they needed to get outside help from medical professionals, but this proved to be a mistake. It immediately set our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated deceit and coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down, and in retrospect, I can't blame them. This was the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care.
Chloe Cole started her transition at age 12 and had a double mastectomy by age 15. She was put on testosterone at age 13. She will never know what it's like to grow up as a normal girl, and her changes will never be reversed. In other clips from another interview, she has talked about dysfunction in her urinary tract and sexual dysfunction as well. She still has joint and back problems from the puberty blockers. There are many detransitioners out there who have had these very same problems, and several have spoken out. There are even trans people who are happy with their transition who regret taking puberty blockers because they don't know what their health will be like later down the line due to the lack of research into these destructive drugs.
For you, but even you said it to me. You wished maybe you didn't take the blockers or slowed down.
Oh, I definitely don't think I should have took the blockers.
Wow.
Because,
like,
who the hell knows what's gonna happen to me? And I feel like more people should have pushed back as well, because it was so easy for me.
There are still many parents who don't do any research and listen only to their doctors, despite the resources online that are available to them. They are causing irreversible damage to their children that they will never recover from. Now, all it takes is a simple Google search to find all of the horrific side effects of puberty blockers that have been found out thus far. And those side effects are just the ones that we know now. Who knows what we will find later down the line when these kids who were put on them start to grow up into adults. While all the side effects for HRT aren't available online, there are many trans people and detransitioners who are starting to come out and talk about just how damaging these drugs are, especially to children. The best thing that you can do for your kid who is claiming to be trans is a lot of therapy. Even social transition can be harmful, but that's something that I'll get into in another video because this video is way longer than I intended it to be. Don't listen to just one doctor if your child tells you that they are trans or that they want to be the opposite sex. Even if your child does grow up to be trans, they will be much healthier and happier if they are able to go through the natural changes that their body is supposed to without intense medical intervention. Kids are too young to understand just how damaging these drugs are. If a child cannot consent to sex, they can't consent to a sex change. Thank you all for watching today's video, and thank you to all the new people who have subscribed to my channel. It really means the world to me to know that people want to hear what I have to say. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave any topics that you'd like me to go over in the comments, or you can DM me on TikTok that I'll have linked below. Thank you all again, and you have a great rest of your week.